Have you heard of Wayfair Gate? Well, you're about to. I feel a bit of personal responsibility for Wayfair Gate because it was on June 14th when I happened to have been shopping on that site for a storage cabinet. And I came across these ones here. They were so odd and out of place that I tweeted about it. And I said, my spidey senses are tingling. What's with these storage cabinets? Extremely high prices, all listed with girls' names, and identical units are selling for different amounts. And I got a screen grab of what I had been looking at. And just check this out. The prices, $19,499 for the Alasia storage cabinet. $16,099, $13,899, $23,499. And the thing is, when I clicked through, a lot of them were identical cabinets in dimension and number of shelves. So I just thought it was really weird. And I tweeted. And then I took a vacation. You might recall I wasn't here for a couple weeks. I didn't do a video for a couple weeks. I did other things. I just got my mind off of the world for a while. But I came back and oh my goodness, this thing, Wayfair Gate, had grown. It had grown up, I assume, from that original seed that I planted. And all of the research done after that was done by just people who picked up on the story and added to it along the way. And now it has taken over the zeitgeist. Here's an example of what I mean. I'm going to play this one for you right now.
Stop scrolling because this is scary. Right now there's a whole conspiracy about Wayfair's mysteriously overpriced cabinets with names attached to them. These names are also the names of missing children. So I thought I would do some more digging, and what I found is insane. I went on the Wayfair to see if their other items had weird names and were crazily overpriced. No, a cabinet 4 times the size of that suspicious one is way less. $12,000? $2,000. And an interesting thing happens when you look up the SKU numbers of those cabinets. It's not just on Wayfair, though. People are finding these suspicious items on Amazon and Etsy. So I did an experiment. I looked up children on Etsy, and look, $13,000 for a set of 6 children's activity cards, and there only happens to be one available. Same with this $10,000 just regular toy chest. Totally not sus.
So that young woman just gave you a breakdown of what the Wayfair Gate story is all about. And in a future video, I'm going to do a deeper dive on the players involved in Wayfair. And I'm going to show you some interesting stuff that I've already got screen grabbed. Okay? But for today, what I really want to talk about is the reaction of the mainstream media and the talking heads, the usual suspects that I see come along every time there's a story about child predators. 99 times out of 10, these guys will come along, these same people, and they'll put the kibosh on it. Their main angle of attack is just to insult anyone who's interested. They want to insult anyone for asking questions about it because they figure that'll scare people away. People are very intimidated by the online mobbing and being called names, or at least they used to be. I think that angle of attack is losing its luster. And today I want to go through some of the many, many cases that there have been in the past to show you that it is worthwhile asking these questions of Wayfair and why we should not accept their lame answers. I want everyone to learn by the end of this video that you should ignore the mainstream press, because the mainstream press is the pedo cover-uppers. Not always, but a lot of the time. Also, I'm hoping that by showing a lot of these past cases, that the people who are now just waking up because of Wayfair Gate, I hope you'll go down these other rabbit holes too. And you'll see that this wide-scale child sex predator trafficking, these rings, they've been going on forever. And the main reason they are allowed to continue is because of the failure of the press. All right, I think I've had my opening rant now. Oh, and P.S., the only reason I was shopping for those cabinets was because I wanted to get some extra supplies in because of COVID, and I hate the restrictions and lockdown, so I don't want to go to the store, so I was going to get some extra, and I needed a place to put them. So another mainstream false narrative is the reason that Wayfair Gate happened in the first place. So you guys, you brought this on yourselves. And I'm hoping that this is the great awakening for real. Just to give you a close look at what this girl was talking about in her video. Look, here's the Samia 5-shelf storage cabinet for almost $13,000 and a missing girl from Columbus, Ohio, Samia Mumin. Yaritza storage, Yaritza Castro missing. And there's been things like these girls, some of these children have been found and recovered. I don't know that that's true. I don't know what's true because, as I said, I didn't do this research. This research all sprang up naturally and organically from that one little seed I planted. Look at the power we each individually have. Boom, amazing. So what is with these high-priced cabinets? Did Wayfair come out and make a statement about it? Yes, they did. Here's what they said. The products in question are industrial-grade cabinets that are accurately priced. They're going to take down the photos, they say. They're going to redo them. They're going to change the names, and then they're going to relist them at some later date. That's what Wayfair said, that they were actually accurately priced because they're industrial cabinets. Oh yeah, Wayfair, did you come out yet and explain this? The pillow covers? The $10,000 pillow covers, which have names that happen to correspond, once again, to missing children. Wayfair hasn't bothered, to my knowledge, to come out and explain why the pillow covers also were priced so high. Is that an accurate price? Do you just need to redo the pictures and change the names? Wayfair, or what? No, you probably don't have to because, once again, all the blue checks, all the talking heads, all the mainstream media, they're going to cover up for you. Look at this one from John Cardillo. John Cardillo says today, "People, Wayfair isn't trafficking kids. Some clever lefty filled out the simple process to sell their items on Wayfair, put up those items at prices far exceeding their value, and used names of abducted kids to troll you. Far too many of you took the bait." Well, he's totally wrong. On this page from Wayfair on how to sell, they tell their potential sellers that Wayfair sets the retail price. And from now on, before these blue checks and media pundits beak off, they should do just a little research. As my friend Frank over from Quite Frankly said, I'm paraphrasing here, what does it take to get these people curious? What does it take to get these people to look into these types of things? Or are they, in fact, paid not to? Like Ben Collins here. Ben Collins has a full-time gig going around the internet, supposedly debunking conspiracy theories. It just so happens that most of the things he concentrates on are things that might impact child sex predators and Hillary Clinton. And those two things might not be mutually exclusive. Yeah, Ben, hi by the way. I know you're watching. Gregory Wing. Gregory Wing is a reliable witness, Ben. Special agent for the FBI, looking into child crimes against children in Chicago. And listen to what he has to say.
I'd say 80%, I'd venture up to say 80% of the victims that are sex trafficked are on the internet right now.
80% of child trafficking is done online now. People just get out their phones and they can order a boy or a girl and it's delivered to their house.
With the advent of the internet, it's much easier. Individuals now can download an app, they go onto the internet and say, I'm interested in a boy or a girl, and they get delivered right to their residence or hotel room if they're a businessman that's traveling.
This stuff with Wayfair is definitely worth looking into. Here's some more clips of odd things found. These clips are from Tommy G on Twitter.
This is one thing that I looked at that I thought was weird. Someone posted that the book names were weird. Little Princess, Kindergarten, and this thing looked odd to me. Artificial Intelligence Future. I mean, that AI stuff, we know that's going to be the end of the world. And this word future here looks like it's photoshopped on, right? Which would mean that they photoshopped artificial intelligence and kindergarten and Little Princess and everything else. So that's what got me started looking back into the Wayfair stuff. And there's a ton of stuff on here, guys, if you want. Stuff is crazy as baby dinosaur pictures, mediocre drawings for $30,000 on Wayfair. Are you kidding me? Is this a Picasso? makes no sense why that would be 30,000. And I mentioned it in the last video. What they do is they hide this stuff in plain sight. They make it a price that no regular person would ever buy it. And then the pedos and the people looking for babies and children, the sex traffickers, know which sites to go to. It's kind of like what they used to do with, Craigslist. How they would, the pedophiles and everyone would hide on Craigslist. And the only people covering this are us on the internet, the conspiracy theorists, the people that you guys seem to talk shit about. Meanwhile, this is what we do all day, studying this stuff, and we're cracking codes that the TV will not report to you. So here's a bookcase from Wayfair that I found. So I can't imagine anyone else has seen this because I'm like autistic with this stuff tonight. Wayfair.com, here's a bookcase. Notice that book, that picture frame right there. Haitian Friends. Very interesting. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. This isn't the bookcase I want to focus on. I want to focus on this one. But we have the Haitian Friends picture here, and we have this book, which appears on multiple bookshelves on Wayfair. It's called Bloody Harvest. You could put anything you want on these bookshelves, right? Like, I assume most of this is somewhat photoshopped or staged. So why would you put a book called Bloody Harvest? Why would you write Haitian Friends? You could put, like, a picture of a puppy with, like, a heart under it, or, like, Jack and Jill, happy anniversary, but you decided to put Haitian Friends and Bloody Harvest when you could have put Think and Grow Rich or, a cute kids book or something like that. This things tie in the SKUs, the Yandex SKUs going to sex trafficking site. There was a site called Penis Fingers that the SKUs, the codes on the closets, if you put in the code and then you put it in DuckDuckGo and then you hit run, it was bringing you to pedophile sites and stuff. Really weird stuff. So now let's look into Bloody Harvest. So Bloody Harvest, killing a felon junk for their organs. I mean, this is real, dude. This is crazy. Here's the table of contents. Methods, context, the victims, unidentified. Missing children usually are unidentified when they're chopping up their bodies. Victims, blood testing and corpses. This is the book that they chose to put on the bookshelf in Wayfair. Okay. I do want to say that I did get an interesting email notification the other night. Tommy G, we're writing you because we're concerned. An individual has recently alerted us to the potential suicide or self-harming. Now, by the way, just to let you know, on this video, Jack, Twitter, and all you other I am in a fantastic mood. I am drinking Jameson. I am happy. I have never thought about killing myself. I never will kill myself. Save this video.
Haitian Friends and a book about organ harvesting. We'll get into Haiti a little bit later. That strange warning he got that someone says he might be suicidal, is that a threat? What is that all about? And finally, he mentions that he thinks the photos are photoshopped. Well, it's a little bit more technical than that, according to this Wayfair employee.
And so Steve, he's one of our co-founders, and he was looking into how can we reduce the cost of photography. What we were doing is really ramping up our individual products. Like, we created these new custom Wayfair brands of products that we were selling before under, the normal supplier brand. And we thought, we're going to curate all these products. We're going to come up with our own look and style and story for the customer to make it easier for them to find things that go together well. And the problem was we were taking all these products, having them shipped to a facility in either Kentucky or Massachusetts where they'd have to assemble the product, build the background, build the whole stage, have photographers come in, the stylists tweak every little thing in the photo. And they'd create, these nice looking pictures like the one you see here, but it would cost about $1,000 on average. And so what Steve was finding, his background's mechanical engineering, so he was in the 3D space and thinking how can we take computer-generated imagery and create a photo that looks this good? And in fact, that's actually a rendering that Steve had done early on, and it cost him $250. So for a quarter of the cost of the photo studio process, here we are with an identical output, and yet the value that we get out of this as well is these reusable 3D models.
So all those nice backdrops, all the pictures of the items, they are done by Wayfair, at least according to that guy, which means that those crappy photos of those cabinets was probably done by Wayfair too. I'm not saying that for sure, but that's what it looks like to me. All right, now let's change to the whole idea that these conspiracy theories, this Wayfair supposed conspiracy theory, is being debunked by reporters phoning up Wayfair and saying, "Hi guys, are you trafficking children?" And Wayfair saying no. And then the reporters go, "Everybody saying Wayfair is trafficking children are far-right, lunatic conspiracy theorists." That's it. That's the end of it. But I ask you, If there was a conspiracy theory floating around that a leading actress from the television show Smallville, a beautiful young woman, was secretly on her off time recruiting people into basically a mind control sex cult called DOS, under the tutelage of a sort of grand master who runs a bigger cult called Nexium. And she was getting these women to give her compromising materials on them so that she could always have that hanging over their heads. And she was branding these women, burning her own initials into the hip area of a whole bunch of women. Would you say that that's just a crazy conspiracy theory? How about if I said a guy who handles the money of some of the world's wealthiest people and invests it for him, who has airplanes and multiple mansions and an island in the Virgin Islands, and on that island there was underground tunnels leading to a strange Egyptian sort of temple, and that temple had giant golden cockatiels on the roof and a gold dome, and outside were statues of the god Pan in strange positions. Would you say that sounds... And that guy was trafficking children? He was luring people to his island so that they could have sex parties with them and get other billionaires to have sex with these minor children so that they could take photos and blackmail them. Does that sound like a crazy conspiracy theory? Because you already know where I'm going. Both of these two things happened. Both of these two things happened. Keith Raniere and Allison Mack were found guilty for their crimes against women and guilty of trafficking. And so was Jeffrey Epstein way back in the day. He was supposed to be tried once again for more extensive crimes, but we all know what happened there. He didn't kill himself, so there will never be a trial. What else we got? Here's some more. Sex trafficking. Is Peter Nygard the Canadian Jeffrey Epstein? This is from 2020 as well. He's a big fashion house mogul in Canada. All the money in the world. Everything he could ever want. And one of those things, it turns out, is an island, just like Jeffrey Epstein, where he keeps women basically as indentured servants and mistreats them. And there's more to the story, of course, but we don't have time. What else have I got? Keith Raniere and the Nexium thing. Also involves Claire Bronfman. The Bronfmans are almost royalty in Canada, and they're involved in this. Not only that, but it's rumored that Carlos Salinas, the former president of Mexico, his son Emiliano Salinas, is allegedly a top member of the sex cult Nexium. And now they're being sued by 80 more people in a lawsuit claiming that Nexium cult leaders exposed them to human flight experiments, forced labor, and human trafficking. Yeah, they got a lot of people from Mexico, and they have this thing called Rainbow Cultural Garden. Oh, it's a rabbit hole. So if you're just waking up to the elite pedophile crimes and the human trafficking network that they profit so mightily off of, if you're just waking up to that now, I'm hoping all these rabbit holes, all these clues will make you more curious. Here's one from 1989, The Bombshell That Didn't Explode, with a story about key officials in the Reagan and Bush administration involved in a callboy ring. But look how the press immediately covers it up. The story is intriguing, involving male prostitution and a lobbyist who used parties to promote his business connections and business connections to promote his parties. But is it a government scandal or just a sordid slice of life in a city that happens to be Washington, D.C.? Yeah, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. Just go back to sleep. From that story springs this one, the Franklin scandal. This is one of the things that red-pilled me many years ago. If you haven't looked into it, go look into it. The Senate did appoint an investigator to go investigate this thing. The allegations of a massive satanic child abuse sex ring involving an orphanage and stuff in Nebraska and high-rolling members of that society and of Washington political elite. This guy, Gary Caradori, was investigating it when his plane crashed mysteriously, and killing him and his son, by the way. These people have no morals. Of course, they're not going to worry about his son being in the car. Why would they? A person named in the Franklin cover-up scandal, the callboy ring, was Barney Frank. Whatever happened to him? Oh, nothing. He served all the way up till 2018, I think, when he finally stepped down voluntarily from the Senate. Doesn't matter, no, don't worry. I mean, he acknowledged hiring male prostitutes who were living in his house, at least one of them, and doing what there? Who knows? Running their business out of there, it turns out. It doesn't matter. It doesn't tarnish a person's reputation in certain circles. Which are those certain circles? Why, the Democratic National Congress, for example, Hillary Clinton. Look, this is from January 28th, 2020. One of Hillary Clinton's top attack dogs, former U.S. Representative Barney Frank, has surfaced as a new flashpoint in the battle between Bernie Sanders and establishment Democrats. Wow. Jeez. They just don't have any morals. And look at all these. There's a big list of cases that were reported. Ritual abuse of children in all of these daycare centers, most of them in the 80s and early 90s. Of course, most of those accused in these cases were eventually freed because what did they say? They said these people are hysterical, they're making things up, they're watching too much TV. None of this is true. Here's the Wikipedia entry about it. Daycare sex abuse hysteria. Nice. Just like they're going to say about Wayfair, just like they said about Pizzagate. And oh yes, Pizzagate, I will talk about that in a second. Here's another one. FBI investigates Presidio child molest case. This involved 60 children at the Army's Letterman Hospital in California. And a guy that is alleged to have been involved in this, but who is extremely litigious, is a guy called Michael Aquino. I have no evidence whatsoever that Michael Aquino had anything to do with it, but I want to show you a picture of him. Here he is. This is Michael Aquino. He is a Satanist, admitted, and he works in the Navy, or he did. And he wrote a book called Mind War, by the way, which was all about psychological operations. Interesting. He kind of looks a little bit like Les Wexner. Remember Les Wexner was supposed to also be investigated next to Jeffrey Epstein? Whatever happened to that? Nothing! And will anything ever? Well, that depends on the press. If the press lets people know that this should be investigated, then it will be. But the press falls down. The press is now the top cover-upper for elite pedophiles. Here's more. Here's another story. The Finders. This is an excellent video about this story from the Conscious Resistance YouTube channel. Turns out that investigation was stopped by who? The CIA. Or so the rumor has it. Here's another one. Cynthia McKinney grills Donald Rumsfeld about DynCorp human trafficking. I'm going to play a couple seconds of this for you.
Mr. Secretary, I watched President Bush deliver a moving speech at the United Nations in September 2003, in which he mentioned the crisis of the sex trade. The president called for the punishment of those involved in this horrible business. But at the very moment of that speech, DynCorp was exposed for having been involved in the buying and selling of young women and children. While all of this was going on, DynCorp kept the Pentagon contract to administer the smallpox and anthrax vaccines and is now working on a plague vaccine through the Joint Vaccine Acquisition Program. Mr. Secretary, is it policy of the U.S. government to reward companies that traffic in women and little girls?
Now we have a link between the child traffickers and the organizations that go out to vaccinate the world's children, just like Bill Gates does. That's Bill Gates' bread and butter, vaccinating every child in the world. What kind of access has he got, I wonder? Here's another one. Oprah loved this guy. Oprah loved this guy right up until he got busted for running a baby mill, sex trafficking, sex slave farm, and selling the babies for up to 40,000 pounds before shipping them from Brazil to Europe. Do you think John of God wrote down in his little book, sold one baby, 40,000 pounds, shipped to Europe from Brazil? Of course not. He's got to have a way to wash that money. Money laundering. How would he do it? I don't know. Ben Collins, you want to tell me what your guess is? All right, remember Tommy G? Well, he mentioned Craigslist in his video, saying, because they also facilitated trafficking, human trafficking on their classified ads. Do you ever wonder, by the way, how Craig Newmark got so rich, so rich from a free classified ad site? Yes, some of them had fees attached, but I mean, he made a god-awful amount of money from that free classified ad site. Well, check it out. In 2018, finally, Craigslist decided to take down the personal section, which was facilitating sex trafficking. Craigslist drops personal ad because of sex trafficking bill. And I think that's really important to mention. All those years it was running, it was Hillary, it was Obama, it was the Democrats in power. They talk a good game, but really, did they do anything? They obviously didn't do anything effective, not as effective as President Trump has done, because boom, all of a sudden, Craig Newmark's business changes. And Trump's made task forces about human trafficking. He's built the border wall to stop them trafficking across the border. He's done multiple EOs about this. He is taking action. And I'm going to show you that that is making a difference in the minds of some people, finally now. I have another little video to show you at the end. But yeah, Craig Newmark, look at from 2010. There was a whole story about it on ABC News with victim testimonies. One girl was being trafficked in Kansas. She saw the story on ABC News about how Craigslist facilitates human trafficking, and then she ran away after seeing the report. And there's other testimonies here too. And the witnesses write to Craig Newmark and they say, Craig, we write this letter to you so you will know from our personal experiences how Craigslist makes horrific acts like this so easy to carry out. And the men who carry out and the men who arrange them, they're made very rich. Craig Newmark didn't even bother to reply. Nice guy, right? He's so nice, though. I know he is, because he has a philanthropic foundation. Craig Newmark philanthropies. He's just into fairness, opportunity, and respect. One of the things he funds is trustworthy journalism and the information ecosystem. Yeah, trustworthy for a certain group of people who don't want certain stories to make it to the mainstream. Right? Maybe? I did a video on that whole game, the fact-checking, the sponsorship of journalists. I did a video 2 years ago about it, and it's very deep, and it comes down to the same usual suspects: Bill and Melinda Gates, Newmark, Ahmadiyar, Open Society Foundation. In the background, through other foundations that they don't own, they fund all of journalism now. Pointer, PolitiFact, ProPublica. Oh, there's a whole story about that. But let's move on. This is an example of how they pretend they want change. Here's an article from The Hill from 2018. We need an updated approach to combat human trafficking. And they got it in Donald Trump, but they didn't get it in Hillary Clinton, going all the way back to when she was First Lady. Listen to what it says here. As First Lady, she was a guiding force behind the current paradigm of prevention of human trafficking. I don't think she really cared about that. I think she wanted to be in charge of the rules so that she could facilitate human trafficking. It's very possible. Here's a 2013 report from NBC News about how her State Department covered up for a pedophile and other crimes. It's an Inspector General report, and it's really out there, and it was really reported. But what's happening now, because all of this is being brought up again in the Great Awakening, factcheck.org debunks how conspiracy theorists are interpreting the video. But you'd have to read it, and I don't have time in this video to do it for you. They admit right in their debunking that the video says exactly what the quote-unquote conspiracy theorists say it says. Hilarious. P.S. Of course, Craig Newmark funds factcheck.org. That report was from 2013, but Hillary was an old hand at it by then. Back in 2008, she and Bill were down in Haiti because of the earthquake. The Clinton Foundation went steaming in there and practically took over the country. I mean, they had the Clinton Foundation going on, and at the same time, Bill Clinton was named the UN Special Envoy to Haiti. So he oversaw all the other contractors that were coming in there. The the Oxfam and the Red Cross, etc. And what did they do when they're down there? Well, this is in the Harvard Human Rights Journal. Owning Laura Silsby's Shame, How the Haitian Child Trafficking Scheme Embodies Western Disregard for the Integrity of Poor Families, and does it ever. The Haitian authorities arrested a group of Idaho missionaries for attempting to cross the border into the Dominican Republic with 33 children without papers or authorization. And some of the kids were not even orphans, as it turns out. What happened? Bill Clinton intervened on the behalf of the missionaries. Eventually, the Haitian system decided that none of the missionaries were guilty of illegal activities except the leader, Laura Silsby, who faced a lesser charge of organizing illegal travel. So, have you heard of that? If you're new to all this, you probably haven't. But it's a true story. And it just shows this pattern of the Clintons disregarding human life. You probably know about the Hillary Clinton email scandal, right? Well, during testimony about that, an NYPD officer's notebook was entered into evidence, and one of the things it says in the notebook is Hillary Clinton and Foundation, Crime Against Children. At this point, nobody really knows what that means for sure. But let me tell you what happened. You want to know why they hate Michael Flynn? General Michael Flynn? They're making up all these stories about him colluding with whoever. I don't even know. And they've tormented him and tortured him and bankrupted him and threatened him with jail so many times. They've dragged his court case out for 2 years. It's because he brought the public attention to that note in that notebook. Here's what the spin masters, the pedophile cover-uppers, the Hollywood machine, the MSM machine, here's the type of thing they did.
A lot of uninformed, gullible people fell for the Clinton-Podesta sex ring theory. People like Trump's pick for National Security Advisor, Michael Flynn, who tweeted out a link writing, "New Hillary emails, money laundering, sex crimes with children, etc. Must read, introducing it, you decide." Okay? Then I decide a guy who spreads this bull shouldn't be in charge of national security.
And you hear the crowd cheer? Well, up until Wayfair Gate, the crowd would still cheer. But I'm telling you, that crowd is getting smaller by the day. Like I said, I have a video for you at the end that will show you what I mean. And that's not all. Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, John Podesta, is brothers with a guy called Tony Podesta. And by the way, here's what Andrew Breitbart tweeted about them in 2011. How prog guru John Podesta isn't a household name as a world-class underage sex slave op cover-upperer defending unspeakable dregs escapes me. He knew back then that sketchy stuff was going on. And so there's John Podesta. Here's his brother Tony Podesta at his house with his wife with his art collection, showing it off to Washington Life magazine. He's proud of it. A headless gold statue in a grotesque position. But that's not all. Here's more from Washington Life magazine. Here's a picture of his art in another room. Look at all these kids seemingly dead at the bottom of a closed-up pool. Here's another one, 2 girls seemingly dead in a marsh in shallow water. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. That is just the tip of the iceberg. But it might go further than art. Do you remember in 2007 a little girl called Madeleine McCann was kidnapped? It's a very sad story. She was in Portugal where the parents went missing. Here in 2013, they released the police sketches of the suspects they think were involved. I'm just saying. This is John Podesta and Tony Podesta, and these are the sketches. Now, because this is all bubbling to the surface, all of a sudden Portugal thinks they have someone who did the murder. They've arrested someone, a drifter. How? He doesn't look like these guys. Anyway, could it be to get the real suspects off the hook? I don't know. But these are the type of people Hillary Clinton not only hangs around with, but hires to manage her campaign. The Podesta brothers are ready to cook for Hillary. That's in 2015. And the cook thing is a little creepy. I wonder what they were going to make. Pizza? I'm not going to get right into Pizzagate, but This guy, James Alefantis, figures centrally in Pizzagate, and even if he never did an actual crime, what they did in that restaurant was sick. It's just sick. I've done videos on it. There's millions of videos on it. You should go have a look, because Wayfair Gate, hopefully, is letting new people see that these things aren't the crazy conspiracy theories that the mainstream media says they are. People looking at Wayfair Gate are saying, no way. There's something going on here. And they're watching as the media is saying, we've confirmed with the CEO of Wayfair that he is not child trafficking. He's not trafficking at all. It's all just a big misunderstanding because he says so. So drop it, go away, nothing to see here. And then, of course, they get mocked. They get lumped in with the far right, just like the rest of us have always been lumped in with the mysterious far right. What are they anyway? I've never met anyone from there. And of course, when it all broke and they mocked us for looking into it and asking the right questions that anybody should ask when we know that children are being exposed to really sick things, what happened? Well, they rallied around James Alefantis and Comet Pizza in D.C. All the D.C. swamp made sure they signed this big poster in support of this weirdo. And then what happened? Donald Trump won the election. These guys, look at how unhappy they are. I wonder why. There's a lot of cover-ups going on, and a new administration might actually figure some of them out. And they did. Look what Michael Flynn tweeted. Look at the EOs that Trump has produced. Look at the busts of human trafficking, the shutdown of Backpage, which cut off a major conduit for their trafficking operation. So you see, they had to go somewhere else. I wonder where they went. I wonder where they might have gone. By the way, interesting factoid. Thanks to Jen here, she noticed that a guy who used to work for the Clinton Foundation also works for Wayfair. Interesting. John S. Kim. It's all coming together, she said. Wayfair Gate, save the children. He worked for the Clinton Health Access Initiative for 3 years. He also worked for Bain & Company. If you look at the board of directors for Wayfair, there's 4 or 5 people from Bain & Company, and there's 4 or 5 people from McKinsey. If you're new to all this, you would have no idea why that's significant. But believe me, it is. It's especially significant considering that officially on the books, Wayfair, the company, has never turned a profit. And yet it gets hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment in it from the biggest people, the biggest name investors out there. And it has 8 to 10 people from Bain and McKinsey on its executive. How are they paying these people? How can they afford free shipping? And did you notice it said way back in the beginning, if you look at how to be a seller on Wayfair, it says right there that Wayfair doesn't take a percentage from the sellers on its site. It doesn't take a percentage. It does the photos. It sets the prices. And it gives free shipping. How's this thing making money? Ben Collins? Hey, Ben Collins, how is Wayfair making money? At least look into that, mister. Do a little bit of your job. I know you think you can go on forever just mocking people for a paycheck, but you can't. It won't last. So just traversing through, here's the Backpage thing. They shut it down. It was a front for prostitution and human trafficking, and they did find this guy guilty. In fact, he pled guilty. He did a plea deal. He's going to get such a lame sentence, though. I think it's a maximum of 5 years. But notice that he's in Arizona. What happened when they shut this thing down? Why, the usual left-leaning, contrived media, Vice, New Yorker, The Star in Canada, The Washington Post. Oh my goodness, it's a terrible thing that they've shut down Backpage. It's horrible. Sex workers are not going to have anywhere to go now. Sex workers, are they free or are they enslaved? What else? Oh yeah, Arizona. I said remember that. Because just recently, June 21st, 2020, Arizona elected official pleads guilty in baby selling scheme. This guy called Paul Peterson. What he was doing was going to the Marshall Islands, and he was bringing pregnant women from there to the States and selling the babies. Also from Arizona or Utah, Jeff Flake. Jeff Flake was a never Trumper, another one. And guess what? He goes to the Marshall Islands chain too. Look at that. Jeff Flake to lead Utah Tech Group on Marshall Islands Survivor Trek. If you want to know more about this, and there's a lot to this story, I did a video, Swamp Creatures of the Pacific. I recommend that you go watch it. One thing I will tell you now, before we go on to the next thing, is that this company that he took, this tech company, is called Podium. What does Podium do? Online reputation management. Oh my goodness. So if you get bad reviews, this company comes along and makes sure that they sink to the bottom or they contradict them. What about a company like Wayfair? Would it need that? Because I hear it sells some pretty shoddy things depending on what you buy. And maybe that's because that's not its main business line at all. I don't know. I don't know the reason. All I know is that Wayfair has multiple corporate offices in Utah, where these guys do their business. Utah. You know who else is from Utah? Mitt Romney. Hey, by the way, are Jeff Flake and Mitt Romney huge anti-Trumpers? Why would that be? I wonder. Here's Axios doing its part to discredit the quote-unquote conspiracy theory. And I just want to read this part. They say, why this matters. The claims about Wayfair caught fire among QAnon, the online group that believes President Trump is fighting a secret war against deep state pedophiles. Yes, it's possible that Trump and his whole administration are trying to get rid of this scourge on humanity, these rings of pedophiles, these child traffickers, these elite criminals that walk around in suits and work for perfectly respectable sounding companies, but who on the back end are making their money off the backs of our kids all around the world. $150 billion per year. And in 2011, it was $32 billion. This has been the growth industry. It's been the growth industry, us people as products. And do you think it's all cartels? That can't be. Because part of the human trafficking thing is organ harvesting. Perhaps that's what some of these things are on Wayfair, who knows? But obviously, if you are looking for an organ, you're not going to go to the cartels directly. You're going to go to a doctor. And somehow those parts have to get around the world. And somehow that money has to go to that doctor without looking like it. Because then there's a paper trail, right? So, yeah, when Ben Collins and factcheck.org and all these mainstream venues say, these crazy right-wing conspiracy theorists think that Wayfair is shipping children in cabinetry to final destinations. That's not it. I don't think anybody thinks there's kids in cabinets or boxes being shipped around the country. That's not it. It's how the money for those children or that sex slave or even indentured labor, normal labor, picking. They found some kids that were illegal. They were illegal migrants. They'd been scooped up by nefarious human traffickers and they'd been brought to an egg farm. And they worked there 12 hours a day. So there's that angle on it as well. There's so many things. And let's not forget, it doesn't have to be people. They could be trafficking weapons. They could be trafficking drugs. They could be trafficking uranium. They could be trafficking viruses. They could be trafficking any number of things. I don't know. But at least I'm curious and smart enough to know something is not right with what's happening on Wayfair. Something is not right. And it's a huge, huge, huge business. You know people want a piece of that pie. And I'm really glad that QAnon came along because I know for a fact the QAnon phenomenon scares the deep state, especially the human traffickers and the pedophiles. Because a lot of what QAnon has talked about over the 3 years or whatever that it's been going on is human trafficking. I learned about Epstein from QAnon a year before, 2 years before the story broke. I learned about Nexium from QAnon drops before the story broke. And, well, QAnon focuses a lot on Hillary Clinton too, because those foundations, not just the Clinton Foundation, tons of them, they are the problem. They cloak themselves in humanitarianism, but it's not. It's a ruse. It's a cover for what they're really doing. And mostly they are just sucking money out of these countries. Money and people. Money and people. And they are literally harvesting the human race. Literally. All right, I'm going to wrap up. I know this was a long one. Remember you may have heard of the Jimmy Savile case. Jimmy Savile was a children's television performer, and it turns out they solved the case after he died. That, it was true. He actually was molesting boys and raping corpses in hospitals. For years and years and years. And hundreds, we're talking of hundreds of victims here. They ask how BBC star Jimmy Savile allegedly got away with abusing 500 children and had sex with dead bodies. They asked this in 2014. How? How? Because the press failed. Full stop, that's the answer. Public pressure can achieve anything, but there can't be public pressure if the public doesn't know. Sure, there were rumors, whispers that he wasn't everything he seemed, murmurs he was really a sexual predator and had abused dozens of children, but they never stuck. Not Jimmy Savile, people told themselves. Not Fix-It Jim. Not Wayfair. Not Hillary Clinton. Not Tom Hanks. Not James Alefantis of the pizza place. No, surely not. Right? And they just have the gall to put it right in the paper, even though they're responsible for it. Look, more from BBC in 2014. How did the pro-pedophile group Pi exist openly for 10 years? How? Because the media failed. The media failed to report until it was all over. And then it's safe, right? What's wrong with you journalists? What's wrong with you, Ben Collins, by the way? You don't have to stay a bitter pedophile cover-upper for the rest of your life, Ben. You could have a future that's different. Why don't you come over to the light side? Huh? Why don't you give it a try? And here's the icing on the cake, okay? Here's a Fortune magazine story about human trafficking being an epidemic in the U.S., and it's also big business. It's from 2019. In this article, they talk to Cindy McCain, and she says, this is not only a dominant issue, it's an epidemic issue. And you note here, Cindy McCain is the chair of the McCain Institute's Human Trafficking Advisory Council. Cindy McCain also said this in January 2020. We all knew about Epstein.
It's like everything. It hides in plain sight. Epstein was hiding in plain sight. We all knew about him. We all knew what he was doing. But we had no one that was, legal aspect that would go after him. They were afraid of him. For whatever reason, they were afraid of him. All of a sudden, someone said, BS, we're not afraid of you anymore, and what you're doing is not only wrong, it's illegal, it's, all those things. All of a sudden, someone said, BS, we're not afraid of you anymore.
Somebody said BS? Come on, Cindy, you can admit who that was. It was Donald Trump, and you know it. I just want to close with that video I promised you of this second young woman. Now, be warned, there's language, okay? But just listen.
This might be the hardest pill to swallow of the century. Understand this. I am a registered Democrat. A week ago, I was trolling this man's shit. If you had asked me to spit in his face and piss in his coffee, I would have done it for free. I would have done it for free. So try to imagine what I've seen that would make me flip the switch that hard. You guys know what a double agent is? Have you heard of the phrase, keep your friends close, put your enemies closer? What the news has been burying is that he's actually been talking about going after the human trafficking. Once I realized that the news was actually kind of fake, and Hillary was in fact lying, I had to consider the possibility.
Boom. Boom. The Great Awakening.
Once I realized that the news was actually kind of fake.
This is the crack. This is the crack. There are people out there saying that this comes from, it's a plant, it's a trick, it's a ruse. Someone made this whole thing up to get everyone all excited, and it's Pizzagate 2.0, and they're going to humiliate us. Well, listen, remember what I said right off the beginning. I know that's not true. I know it's not true. I am the origin point of this whole thing. I didn't do the research. That credit goes to everybody else who picked up that little seed that I dropped, and they planted it, and they watered it, and they gave it sunlight, and now look. I'm choked up. I'm really excited. I'm so stoked. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now. Till next time, everybody. Oh, wait! I gotta do the ad for myself. I'm sorry, it's such a bummer. If you'd like to contribute to my work, please see the description box below. I have a paypal.me account, and I have a P.O. box where you can send cash or check. If you send a check, please make it out to Polymedia. And I know right now, all those bitter little haters are gonna say I'm a grifter. I'm just making a living, just like you, except I'm doing it honestly. All right, everybody, until next time, peace out.